Good evening, folks. Well, have we got one for you today? I know we started off with the law in this series of videos and then got sidetracked by the lockdown. Three brains got themselves together this weekend and we rattled out a bit of cream out there for you guys who want to understand fully our position today in relation to the titles. What has gone on with title. So we've put together what's happened and a series of acts that have come in support of this platform. So away we go. It all begins with a child born. Be that a boy or a girl, it's all about you arriving in this world. And of course, you are going to become a man or woman. Now, the first game and play by deception comes before you take the child from the hospital. The hospital maternity registration. Did you know about this one? And what they do is rather sinister, to say the least. So with this maternity registration, what they register is the umbilical cord and the placenta as a human person. Did you understand that? So the hospital are registering the umbilical cord and placenta as a human person. And this is achieved through the criminal conversion of a name. Okay, so it's criminal act, this. And this is being done in the hospitals. So this is your midwives. These are the midwives who carry out this agenda. Let's just have a look at a bit of esotericism, let's call it. But let's just look at this at a higher frequency paradigm. So this person so created, a human person made of the umbilical cord and placenta. This person is born of the mother alone. Okay, this is entirely birthed by a mother. There is no father in this trust, this relationship, because of course it's the umbilical cord and the placenta. So this is a mimic of our Christian foundation, because now they claim it to be an immaculate conception of a human person, which translates in one particular legal dictionary as a monster. Very interesting. So in essence, in relation to power over this title, God the Father is usurped. The human person born could thus be said to be Horus born of Set, the dark Horus, which gives you Isis, Horus, Set, IHS. And as I've said, this is a mimic of creation, but it enslaves the man, the boy, the woman, the girl in commerce. Okay, so as terrible as that scenario is, we need to understand how they've come to take that as something that's acceptable. So for that we refer to Black's Law Dictionary, which is the legal Bible, the Bible for the Babble. And it says, born alive, being the product of conception after complete expulsion or extraction from mother, irrespective of the duration of the pregnancy, which breathes or shows any other evidence of life, such as beating of the heart, pulsation of the umbilical cord, or definite movement of voluntary muscles, whether or not the umbilical cord has been cut or the placenta is attached. Each product of such birth is considered live born. Okay, so this is the legal definition which gives or sanctifies this nonsense that's going on in the hospitals with the midwives. Each product of such birth is considered live born and fully recognised as a human person. Okay, are you getting that? Now, yeah, this is where they sanction such insanity And the midwives love it and have gone along with this for, well, how long? You might just be surprised. Right, so there we get the legal definition or foundation to this behaviour. Now, if we want to go back and look at when this perhaps began, you might be surprised how long this has been going on. We can take it to 1801 and then 1837. Now, in 1801, the occupation franchise to this nation, so basically who was in control of the occupation as a franchise, changed. And the new title to the franchise was the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. And that was in 1801. So the franchise was changed over to another group or operation to run this country under occupation. So that would have changed a lot of things, you know, change of franchise, change of power, change of people, change of everything. Then in 1837, they had the Wills Act, which basically removed all the lands and properties, etc., off the people. You've got to also understand that land and man are the same biblical term. So anytime you see the use of the word land or lands, you are talking about man, woman. So that's another point at which this agenda here could have shifted from being what would have been beneficial as a caring midwife would be doing, sort of thing, not creating person, but getting involved with births and helping out people that are about to have a child. Now, if we move forward to 1902, so now we can see things are really changing. So in 1902, we had the Midwives Act. Now, this prevented all but those qualified from delivering babies. Okay? So at this point now, the group controlling this change, which would be the Crown, HM government, etc., gave themselves power over who could and could not become a midwife. And that's in 1902. Now, if you're going to do something like that, there's a reason why you would need that to be so. You're obviously changing the format of what is actually being carried out, and you know full well not everybody is going to take to that. So naturally you have to start to prepare the path to enable that to become a reality. And the 1902 Midwives Act was that very move to do so. So we can see, this is before the First World War, everything's now moving and being prepared to create this mimic of what is our foundational theological cultural heritage. It's quite ridiculous, to be frank, that anybody would want to do something so heinous at such a great event, which is the birth of a child. But this is what they are doing to every child. All children are being presented and created in this way so that they can make money off your title. Right, so that's the one that very few people know about. Though it's not a new thing, it has been around for a while. So that's the first move against you as a child, a baby rather, to shift it into commerce, and that's the midwives playing the games. Now, of course, the second division, and the one that you are aware of, is the birth certificate, which is a split on the original title. Now, the reason why this is important is because it incorporates the surname, and it's the surname that entraps. If you go back to the video I did earlier in the year on title, that gives you a full explanation of the difference between the entry of birth and a birth certificate. Now, what this certificate does is it removes you from the position of beneficiary executor in the trust, and they take that and leave you in the position of trustee. Now that means you're paying everything in relation to anything that's hit against your trust, your estate. It subjugates a secured party creditor, or you. So you in this trust are a secured party creditor, but this is how they usurp that position, by creating the birth certificate. So this subjugates the secured party creditor, which is you. The beneficiary, that's who you are, and it turns you into their trustees and liabilies. So basically you're going to pay. You're going to be liable for everything they hit this trust with, because they've removed your position as executor and, more importantly, beneficiary. So what it actually is a debt account or a ledger account. So they're hitting this all the time to take they can't actually remove from the estate, they can only add to it. So these additions are what they play with around your estate. You can't access your estate because the ability to do so and or the existence of the estate is hidden from you. And this estate, of course, is not just, it's got a value today, but of course this estate has been built up over many, many centuries from your ancestry. And they've stolen this estate and kept it and held it prisoner, so they can access it and make lots of money off it. But of course, they've put us into major debt. They have bankrupted all the titles, and as I've said many times, we are approaching another time where they would want to kill the creditor. That's you, before you find out what they've actually done with your trust. Now, this account, this birth certificate debt account, in which you are no longer the beneficiary executor, you are put into the position of trustee and liability, bonds and liens are set against it. So what they're doing is charging bonds against the estate using the surname as the surety. Okay, so it's like I said, the surname is so important to this system that it's imperative that you cease to operate with a surname, because it's been thrust upon you. It's not anything to do with you. Your family name, which is what it mimics, also doesn't belong to you. It's just the name into which you were born. You don't have to accept or take it on. But it's certainly not a surname. If anything, you must have it as a family name, which is what it is. See, the surname belongs to them under Crown copyright. Can you see? So the surname is theirs. They've attached it to you, your trust, the original trust, and they just milk it for their own ends, and keep you out of accessing it, by definition of plain ignorance to the facts that it actually exists and that you can access it. They just pretend and lead you down a merry dance to suggest you can't. And it does seem to have been achieved in America. Patrick Devine, now deceased, a very interesting man, who I only came across actually in the last week or so. But a very interesting man. Of course, he's presenting it from the American standpoint, which is basically, if as an American company you are paying, trading in another country and vice versa, you can enter this process whereby you can actually enter the account and charge outstanding bills, etc. to it. I've been unable to find a parallel in the UK in which it's a simple, the format that he's using, how it's carried out in the UK. It has been suggested there are other options, but as it goes at the moment, we are actually looking into that matter. So basically, if you're accepting the surname, which is what you do all the time, programmed into you at school through the registration, that's what that was about, then what you're actually doing is breathing life into that surname, your life. This is how they take it. Remember, this is their system. This is how they operate this system. And so then you become the liabilie, because no crime has been committed. Yeah. You've accepted the surname. You've breathed life into it, your life. There is no crime. It's consensual. In the same way with the occupation, they can't force you to join or support the occupation, but they can encourage you. As long as you join it on your own fruition, then there is no crime committed, because you've accepted it. Like now they're about to get you merry dancing with masks in shops and supermarkets from the 24th of this month. You don't have to do that. You're going to do it though because you think you have to, not because you're living in a slave mind. Your mind has been enslaved, and so you believe you have to do this. The shops, however, let's look at this in a logical sense. Any shop, any establishment, any building that's not public can have its own rules of entrance. And if they so choose to make you wear a mask in these shops, then if you want to go in the shop, you're going to have to wear the mask. That is a right of private enterprise, on your own buildings and your own property, you set the rules. So the reason why most of those shops are going to do it is because they've taken the 30 pieces of silver and therefore feel obliged in case they get more pieces of silver as this lockdown progresses. But of course, you've got to understand that was just a carrot to slid in the first lockdown and get it underway. There is not going to be any furloughs in the future. There will be no more payouts in the future. So what you're actually going to do as a business establishment, if you're going to operate in this format, you are going to destroy your own business while you're hanging on for a potential another 30 pieces of silver, which, let's be frank, chaps, you've had a bit of an easy life there, haven't you? 10 grand in your back sack to do what? Sit home, watch telly? I bet you've loved it. So, that's responsibility. Take the responsibility for your own actions. Okay, that's the way it works, and that is exactly what you've done and are continuing to do. Every time you join this, every time you give it your acceptance, by doing nothing to oppose it, then you are raising it as sovereign. You're clapping on the streets, that's clapping its sovereignty, you're giving it its sovereignty. So it is important that we understand that this system has been brought about through the misuse of your title. First, in the hospitals, as we've gone through, and then the second one is the birth certificate itself. So that is the system. That is what it is that's binding you to this nonsense. And the fact that this grammar has been removed from you through the education systems, from anywhere, you're not going to access this through normal channels. You don't even know that this is the case. But if you want to understand what's happening to you, to your children, what happened to your parents, your grandparents, this is it. This is what they've done. And they're just throwing liens, bonds against your title and bankrupting it. It's still there. But on paper, in relation to this commercial system, this banking system, in their world, what they've done is bankrupt. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. The estate exists, as we've said, and as I've said before, it's very important that we understand these facts, because it's all about to be shifted into the no-hide system, which is evil personified. You really don't want to be under that system. It's what prophecies called the Antichrist system. That's exactly what it is. It's anti-life. It is going to give them the ability to sanction murder on judgment, false judgments based on this nonsense they call the no-hide laws. So that's what you've got in the pipeline. That's what they're intending to do. This is what President Trump will emancipate in the second term. Because this is exactly what's required. You know, Trump was no accident. Trump was not some... I mean, The Simpsons told you about this in 1992. You know, while you're stuck into QAnon, in my opinion, it's more than likely Blackwater. Yeah, private security. You know, the ones that are protecting Trump, by the way. The ones that you see in the police ranks that are happy to baton and beat the shit out of the public. In most cases, they're not the police. Okay, they are paid thugs, mercenaries. Yeah, your wars you've been having since 2001 have removed the cream of all nations into private security for big money. The good guys in all your regiments have been killed, maimed. You know, these wars haven't been about protecting civilization. It's been about destroying civilization, removing the warriors, the soldiers, the best, and depleting all your armoury, your weaponry, your military strength in that almost 20-year period. So that's what has been achieved through this system. So now what I want to do is, if we look at some acts that we put together over this weekend. Now, there are a lot more acts, of course, that this system needs to support it. But these are the ones that we believed are the important ones if you wish to pursue and have a look at what they're actually doing. So we start this at 1795 and the Shipping Act, which basically allowed aliens to become denizens. Now, what's that, you might say? Well, it's a middle position between citizen and foreigner. Now, in English law, only foreigners and foreign trade is taxable. You're not taxable, the public. You just don't know this kind of stuff. So obviously now you're all classed as foreigners. Yeah, because you're dead trusts. You were dead. That's the birth certificate. That's what it is. The Sesquiv trusts, are all about how they deal with people they class as dead. Lost at sea. Okay? That's where you're at, folks. That's why you're being dealt with by Admiralty Maritime. In 1800, the Crown Private Estates Act, which protected the wealthy class's property, because they put them all into trusts. And this was before the new franchise in 1801 took place, when the franchise was handed over to another power. So they were protecting their own land and property, the aristocracy, by placing everything into trusts. And then the occupation franchise changed, and we became, the title for that occupation was the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Now we go to 1837 and we have the Wills Act, which was the legal method of removing lands off the people. So it's bypassing natural law and from father to son to family to children, etc., and putting it all into the hands of the legal system through the idea of a will. And that's 1837. So 1837 again, we also had the General Registry Office, GRO, was established. So naturally, this is where they are starting to create and play with title. 1882, we have the Bills of Exchange Act, and that's a 19th century version of quantitative easing. Okay, that's exactly what it is, and that was set up to, they said, to balance the books. Okay, of course we're dealing with the Bank of England, we're dealing with the central banks here, so it's their books that we're being balanced with our... So basically they're inventing currency and being paid back in gold and silver and property and goods, your tax, yeah. So that's 1882. So can you see that this is not, it's not something that's just happened overnight. It's not like you've missed the boat into, you know, the education, the grammar you require to understand these concepts is just ridiculous. We don't expect everybody to do it. But at least when you recognise that you've seen something that is important and that would benefit you and your life, you could at least give it some support. Okay, that's what we are looking at needing these days, support. So we can give it full-time attention. Now, in 1882 again, there was the Municipal Corporations Act, which basically incorporated towns and boroughs and places, etc. So there you can see the incorporation of the nation's land, the land which is also man. So they're capturing man through the fictitious titles, or the straw man as it's also called. And that, as again, was 1882. Now 1871, so we're just going back a slight bit there. Albert Pike telegraphs the Three World War strategy, which is basically to kill the creditor. So can you see? Everything's coming into play, and the Three World War strategy is extremely important in this agenda. 1902, the Midwives Act. Now we've covered this again, as I said, which gave the Crown and government the ability to decide who can be a midwife and who cannot. They use the term delivering babies, which is a correct term, to be fair. Well, no livery. Of course, DE before any word means no. 1925, in the Gold Standards Act, when gold was returned as the backing to money. So that's not a bad thing. Well, is it? Because this is another misconception that most people have. There is only one form of money that's ever existed in this world from dot, and that is your labour. That is the only real money value. Now people say, oh, it's not, it's gold. Well, okay, what does it take to remove the gold from the ground? It takes labour. So like, I'm back to what I said, the only real money is your labour. And it's also the only form of exchange is labour. Yeah, because if you've got goods, you've had to labour together. Can you see what I'm saying? So labour is the real and only form of money that has value. In 1925, again, the Importation of Pedigree Animals Act. Now, we're not going to go into detail on this right now, but what I'm going to say to you is, this is, from this has been the mindset change on their behalf to see you as stock, as animals, okay? And you can see them now treating you exactly that way, making you social distance, they're making you queue, they're telling you this, they're telling you that, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's treating you as animals, stock, pedigree stock, and they're not even classing you as pedigree stock. So this is 1925 when they created this act, and it was the importation of all stock to and from Great Britain to the Commonwealth and into the United Kingdom. Okay, so it's stripping things from Great Britain and the Commonwealth and shoving it all into the United Kingdom, which is another occupation title. In 1931, the Gold Standard Amendment Act removed all the liabilities off the governors of the Bank of England, and we've discussed that in the last video. And in 1931, the bankruptcy began the issuance of fiat currency. Okay. So bearing in mind again, the Bank of England is not liable to actually give you anything of value, but it's removing everything off you that is value. Your labour, because you're paying tax, etc. Yeah, you took it. So what? You've exchanged your labour for this prison. In 1933, the US Securities Act. So this is where your birth certificate are then valued and traded on the stock market. Okay, can you see? Derivatives we're talking. This is your debt that they talk about, your derivatives. They need to kill the creditor. You really need to understand what the plan is further down this line. In 1936, the Public Health Act, Section 203, was to inform the chief medical officers within 6 hours from the birth of a child. So, in 1936, they made the original idea for the midwives to create title. They made it mandatory, and it had to be done within 6 hours. So can you see how it's all part of one agenda, one move to create one system? My apologies, I'm dribbling. Okay, and so that is quite an important chronology of specific acts that have gone on the British Isles. Now, you can transfer a lot of that stuff to America. They have their own versions of it, but it still balances out as the same format as it's been introduced into America. So that sort of basically concludes what we put together this weekend. And it is quite important because it pretty much gives you the full picture in relation to how in commerce the banking system is operating against your estate without you even knowing it. In fact, your estate has become a yoke to you basically through this title. Now, just one last thing, the actual occupation. The best way to describe it would be to say we're under occupation by the bar attorneys, the system, the bar system from the Crown Temple. And the bar stands for Bankers Authorised Representative. So ultimately, it's the banks, it's the families that control the banks. This is what we're saying. So removing the Halifax from the hands of the people was a great move. You know, the building societies of old were a good idea. We still have the nationwide, but it did take out a bailout, which, by everybody's understanding of contracts, these bailouts don't come without strings attached. So, in that sense, all bank accounts are up for grabs as this system starts to collapse. And we can see that now with I'm not talking about the system collapsing, but the housing market is definitely going to be the next thing to start taking a hit. So if you've got an house worth £200,000, be ready within the next year for it to come back to its actual value, which will probably be more around the £80,000 to £100,000, if you're lucky. So if you've fallen for all this nonsense that was prepared by the TV with all the decorating programmes, the gardening programmes and the kitchen bathroom focus, if you have released your equity, yeah, you're back to square one. You might as well. We're 21 again, green behind the ears, just got yourself your first mortgage. Okay, so it really is important that you start to grasp this information, because from your investigations into it on your own back, you will come to the understanding of what we need to start to do to move against this trap, because it is a trap, and it's a very dangerous trap. And as we can see now, they know full well they couldn't organise a full or secure a full lockdown without the full compliance of the public. So for this next phase, what they're going to do is just regionalise. And the more tests they get, the more data they have, in order that they can wizard up some fake garbage and start locking places down incrementally, so we're not noticing the like we did on the first one. Okay, they know that we all did it. Well, I said I didn't lock down at all. I didn't allow that virus into my mind, nor shall I in the future. But you did. But you did it because you had faith and trust in those that were telling you what were going on. I'm sure by now, even the most dumbass out there has recognised that there's not been any truth at all being told throughout this whole affair. It's based on garbage. It is garbage, but it's only a path and a means to an end. That end being not very good. Killing the creditor. Okay, killing the creditor. That's really the mantra you need to start letting enter your mind. With that, I will shut up and say, till the next time.